The world's loudest underwater sound wasn't the real mystery. It was what happened. After the Pentagon got involved, why were the files classified? And what did they find in the darkness beneath the Pacific Ocean?
In the summer of 1997, deep within the isolation of the South Pacific, a sound was recorded that shook the scientific world. We were told it was just a massive ice quake, a natural phenomenon of ice cracking in Antarctica. But that was a calculated lie. They didn't classify the Bloop because of its sheer volume. They classified it because of what happened to the men who first heard it. The crew of the classified naval surveillance vessel, the USS Vanguard, didn't just record a sound. They intercepted a biological frequency. Within 48 hours of hearing it, their minds began to unravel. It began as a low-frequency hum that bypassed their headphones and resonated directly within their skulls. The sonar operators described it not as a sound, but as an invasive physical pressure, a heavy, wet vibration that felt like a cold hand pressing against the soft tissue of their brains. Slowly, the frequency shifted, mimicking the rhythmic, monstrous pulse of a massive, slow-beating heart. The equipment didn't just register decibels, it registered a complex mathematical sequence. A sequence that the human brain was never meant to be coded, yet couldn't stop trying to translate. Within 12 hours, sleep became entirely impossible. The crew reported hearing whispers hidden inside the static of their own communication unit. There was no one on the other line. By the second day, a strange collective somnambulism took over the vessel. Crew members were found standing in the narrow, claustrophobic corridors, their foreheads pressed hard against the freezing steel bulkheads. When asked what they were doing, they didn't speak. They only murmured in a low drone that they were listening to the rhythm of the floorboards, claiming the deep ocean was breathing through the iron hull. The psychological degradation accelerated with terrifying speed. The ship's log, kept by Lieutenant Commander Harris, became completely unintelligible. Pages of neat military coordinates were replaced by frantic, overlapping drawings of concentric circles and spiral patterns resembling deep ocean trenches. Crew members began using whatever they could find: grease, paint, and eventually their own blood to scratch these spiraling geometric nightmares onto the walls of their quarters. They claimed it was a map, a calling card from something colossal that had been growing beneath the tectonic plates for millennia. On the third night, the madness peaked. Under the cover of a dense Pacific fog, several sailors bypassed heavy security locks and walked out onto the open, storm-swept deck. They didn't scream and they didn't panic. They simply lined up along the railing, staring down into the pitch-black, churning water below. Witnesses later stated it looked as though they were being pulled by invisible magnetic threads. One by one, they began to climb over the edge, convinced that the pressure below was a warm, welcoming cradle. They didn't jump. They calmly lowered themselves into the black abyss, smiling. Before the USS Vanguard could send a distress signal to the mainland, a total communications blackout was initiated by the Pentagon. A specialized, unflagged tactical containment unit boarded the vessel under the cover of absolute darkness. The surviving crew, half mad and physically exhausted, were immediately placed in sensory deprivation suits, hooded, bound, and silenced. Every scrap of magnetic tape, every sonar log, and every personal diary entry was confiscated. The ship itself was towed to an undisclosed military facility, wiped clean, as if it had never encountered the anomaly. The public was quickly given a comfortable lie: a massive ice quake near Antarctica, a natural sound that traveled thousands of miles through ocean channels. But the survivors of the Vanguard were never allowed to return to their families. They were officially classified as casualties of a non-existent training accident. In reality, they were moved to high-security psychiatric wings of deep underground military installations. Kept in specially soundproofed cells, many of them spent the rest of their lives clawing at their ears, desperately trying to block out a sound that was no longer in the air, but permanently burned into their neural pathways. To this day, official records claim the Bloop was a singular acoustic event of the past, but classified satellite data suggests a much darker reality. Deep in the South Pacific, near the lonely coordinates of Point Nemo, the frequency hasn't stopped. It has only shifted to an infrasonic range far below human hearing, humming silently through the crust of the Earth. It is not a dead sound of cracking ice, but a living, biological broadcast. And as we continue to disturb the deep oceans, we must ask ourselves, what happens when that frequency decides to change its pitch once again?